Joining us now is the head coach of the back-to-back conference champions. One of the more remarkable games and comebacks of the weekend, of course, took place in the America East Championship, where Binghamton, of course, came from behind to beat UMass Lowell. They doubled them up on Saturday and advanced to the NCAA tournament. They will be in the Norman Regional. They'll take on Oklahoma. Speak of our good friend, our head coach, Jess Bump. It's becoming our tradition, joining us here for the second year in a row. Welcome back. That was a dramatic weekend you had over there.
Absolutely. I don't think that's the way we drew it up, but we came out on top on Saturday, so it's definitely been an exciting few days. But we're just getting excited and ready to head down to Norman tomorrow.
Well, let's start. Yeah, I want to start with that conference tournament because you certainly had to fight your way and claw, and in a lot of ways, it was kind of very similar to the season where you kind of dug yourself a hole. You had to come overcome some things and find a way. And so, just take me through the week that was that conference tournament, and you find yourself needing to win twice on Saturday against a good UMass Lowell team. You take the first game, you're down eight. I think what was 6-0 early, 8-2 going into the sixth inning, and you mount this incredible comeback to pull it out and win your back-to-back conference championship. Just take me through that week.
Yeah, so it was a crazy week for us. Obviously, driving up to the University of Maine, it's about an 8.5 hour drive for us. We had already been up there 3 weeks prior, and we dropped the series to Maine. We had a tough weekend up there, and we opened up the tournament against Maine. So, going into that weekend, we just talked about like that happened for a reason. Let's not let that happen again. So, in that Maine game, we went down 3-0 early. And we actually had a big inning in that game as well. I think we scored 8 or 9 and won to kind of make that comeback. And then, we had a day off, and then we were playing UMass Lowell in the winners bracket game. And, the way our conference is set up, we have to play two teams twice. And our last weekend was against Lowell, so we had just played them 3 game series the week before. So it was going to be our fourth time seeing them in less than a week. And in my opinion, UMass Lowell has the best pitching staff in the conference right now with Gianna Lacedra and Olivia DeCitas. So we knew it was going to be a tough game. Obviously lost that one 4-3, came back, beat Bryant, made a statement early on in that game. Rachel Carey hit a leadoff home run. We scored 10 runs in the first 2 innings. And, I think our girls really wanted to make it back to Saturday and face Lowell again for the fifth and sixth time in 7 days. So definitely, Saturday, we felt good going into the game. We had a good game plan, and we just didn't execute early. They scored 3 runs without, us getting an out in the first inning, gave up a 3-run home run, and we really weren't, doing great things offensively. We were making some errors on defense. But the one great thing about this team is they truly never count themselves out. They have a good belief system in each other. And when we batted through the lineup in the sixth, it was pretty remarkable. It all happened really fast. I think we bunted more in that inning than we've bunted all year. We're a team that has a lot of power. We just broke the doubles record, and we didn't hit one extra base hit in that inning to score those 8 runs, which is, I think it just goes to show the resilience of our group and how bad they wanted that back-to-back championship.
And you carry that over to clinch it in winning those two games. I remember I was in the Oklahoma City booth watching, covering Arizona State, Texas Tech, and was following on the laptop your game, and you were down, but you were mounting that comeback, and I was kind of you got me to stick around and watch that little comeback there a little bit. What was said in the dugout when you were down that big? How did you get your players to still believe?
I think the one thing that's been really consistent and great for us all year has been our offense. We've had a lot of games and a lot of innings all year where we've scored runs in bunches, and we know that we can do that. So, I don't think they ever count themselves out from the offensive side of the game. And we just said, all right, backs are against the wall. We got to get this done. And they made great adjustments, started swinging early, trying to make things happen. And we had two freshmen in our lineup that had two really big at bats during that inning to kind of keep it going. Um, but it was crazy. I honestly had to go back and watch the game because I didn't really remember all what happened in that inning. But I think like I said, it just goes to show the resilience of this group. We've had a tough year, a lot of adversity in a lot of different ways. We put together a really tough schedule in our preseason, and we had some games not really go our way that we thought were winnable games for us. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, we were playing a midweek at Cornell and we lost 10-6 and 17-14. And, I think that was when the girls, kind of came together and was like, this is not how we play. This is not our style of softball. And we had about a week without playing a game because we were supposed to play UMBC that weekend after Cornell. Um, so we practiced really hard and we were hard on them and we said this just isn't good enough right now. If you guys want to win a championship, we got to start playing better softball. So that last conference weekend against UMass Lowell, we really pulled all three parts of the game together, which was really the first time all season I felt like all three parts have kind of clicked. And we said, we got to be playing our best softball at the end of the year, and I think we were.
What went through your mind as you made that last down? You completed the double dip there on UMass Lowell.
I wasn't shocked because I know the type of team that we have. And they know what it feels like to have their backs against the wall. Winning it last year, we won that in 3 games. We went through the winners bracket last year and I wouldn't say we did it easily, but we had a good team last year and we had a great season, so we just had a lot of confidence. So I think this one's even more special. And before the games on Saturday, we said this season's been really hard. So if we're gonna win this, it's gonna be hard. We're gonna have to do it the hard way. And I think the lesson that we've learned as a group is from the beginning of the season to now, we've learned how to handle hard better as a group. Um, and that's a Carol Lawson quote that I steal all the time. But things are never gonna get easier. We're just gonna learn to handle the hard things better. And I think they really came together as a group and they weren't going to take no for an answer on Saturday. And so when you asked me what I was feeling like after the game, I was like, wow, how did we just do that? But at the same time, I don't think we were shocked because we know the group that we have and the hard work that we put in and day out together.
Well, and you currently have a great offense, and you're led by, of course, the America East Player of the Year, Rachel Carey. Had a great post tournament. She's had a great season, 14 home runs, 47 RBIs, 477 average. Talk about her and talk about some of the offensive players this year that have contributed.
Rachel Carey is elite. She was rookie of the year last year and she worked extremely hard over the summer and she came back and her goal was I want to be player of the year and I want to help us win another championship and go back to back. And she put her eyes on the prize and she did just that. She's been very consistent all year. Even when we were down playing SEC and some other really good mid-major teams, Rachel was always the one that was very consistent in getting things done for us. But what she did last week was remarkable. She hit 2 home runs first at bat of the game. So we put her in the leadoff spot, very unconventional leadoff hitter, I would say, in our game. But she's got a great mindset and she's worked really hard, both physically and mentally, to get to this point. But just in general, I always got to give kudos to, my associate head coach, Michaela Tranzu. She does an absolutely incredible job with our hitters and how she's developed them over the course of her time here. Um, and she's very hard on them, and practices are hard because we want to make the game easier. And I think that's kind of why, over the course of the last 2 years, our offense is just continuing to get better.
How would you describe the identity of this offense?
Lethal. It's a very unconventional lineup. We don't have a ton of speed. Our top 2 hitters are Rachel Carey and Elisa Allen, who are 2 of the best power hitters in the Northeast right now. I want to say they 14 home runs and 16 home runs. I could be wrong. So our lineup's just definitely different, but we're consistent and they definitely feed off of each other. So I know once we hit one ball hard, like it's just going to keep coming. And I think, especially in the Northeast, that's kind of what Binghamton softball has been about. We had some adversity on the mound this year, but I feel like our pitchers the last 3 weeks have kind of come together as a group and said, what we've been doing is unacceptable, and we have to step up for the team because of our offense. Like, we shouldn't feel any pressure, but we also can't be giving up 10 runs a game and expect our offense to score 11 every time. So, I got to give big props to our senior pitcher, Olivia Kennedy. She threw 5 innings in game one and a full seven in game two, which was equivalent to about 200 pitches. So she wasn't going to let me take her out of that game, and she wanted that moment not only for herself, but she's gone through a lot during her time here at Binghamton. She's a hometown kid, and she said, "Coach Bump, I want this more than anything, and I'm gonna throw till I can't throw anymore." So I got to give big props to her. It was a great outing, a full day. Um, and I think we turned 4 or 5 double plays. Like, everything just clicked on Saturday when we needed it to. So I'm super proud of the grit and toughness of our girls.
That's incredible there. And you mentioned the pitching that had its struggles this season, came on when it needed to. How as the team, were able to stick together? Because it could have been easy for some of the offensive players to look at the pitchers and say, hey, why aren't you doing your thing? Or maybe pitchers say, hey, take, whatever. It doesn't seem that ever happened there. How were you able to stick together there when things, you can mention, all three parts of the game didn't click until the very end when it needed to.
I think, as a group, our team this year is a lot bigger than it was last year. So we won a championship last year with 18 players. We have 24 this year. The makeup of our team was a lot different. We had a lot of newcomers to the team. So, it definitely took them a little bit to gel. But I think, at the end of the day, when their backs were against the wall and they all had a common goal of going back to back and winning another championship, I think their chemistry off the field really helped all of those in-game adversities that we were going through. And they truly just wanted to do it for each other. And I think, their chemistry off the field was definitely a direct correlation of how we performed the last week or two.
That's incredible there. You mentioned you were correct on your statistical memory there. Elisa Allen, 16 home runs, 44 RBIs on the season. What makes her such an explosive player?
Alyssa Allen is just a pure power hitter. Rachel Carey is more of a contact, get the job done every single time type of hitter. Alyssa is a true power hitter. She had a great season last year. 23 home runs, was the player of the year. So I think, when you go back and ask what's the identity of our offense, we have two player of the years in our leadoff spot and our two hole that really start our offense. E had a tough weekend last weekend. I think she only had one hit, but she was on base a ton. I think she had 6 or 7 walks, 3 hit by pitch. So when Rachel leads off the game with a home run and E's then walking and getting on base, it just gives us a lot of confidence to be able to keep everything going. Um, but the one thing we talked to E about after last year, obviously she had great power numbers. Her average was a little bit lower last year. That's gotten better. She's a year older, but when we look back and think that Alyssa Allen still has one more year and Rachel Carey still has two, we feel pretty good about what our offense is going to look like moving forward.
No doubt. And you've got other players that kind of contribute to this offense. You got 5 players overall hitting over 300 of the season, like a McDonough who's hitting 361, Maddie hitting 344, Lauren Payne 336 average on the season, Emma Lawson as well hitting 336. Talk about some of those players that contribute there, that have contributed to this offense because they've got to get on base. They got to do their part so that Rachel Carey and Elisa Allen get pitches.
Absolutely, and I think that's kind of why we, ended up constructing our lineup the way that we did. So I want to talk about Darian McDonough. She's a transfer from Boston College. She spent the last 2 years injured at BC. So I think, she really wanted to win a championship, and that's why she came to Binghamton. She said, "I think there's great things happening here, and it's my goal to win a championship." And she's also a very, very good hitter, obviously with the Power Four experience. So she's in our three hole, has been very consistent all year, giving us good looks from the left side. And she's really turned into a great leader for us with just her overall experience being a fifth year. And then behind her, so, we have 3 lefties, Darian, Maddie Dodig, Lauren Payne. They done a great job for us in the middle of the lineup. And then Emma Lawson, who was the America East batting champion last year. She's our clutch queen. When we need to get things done, Emma's the one that gets it done for us, and she's done that for a while now. So, and then, we have three kids at the bottom of the lineup, 7, 8, 9, who have a little bit more speed, give us a little bit of a different look, and are turning the lineup over to get back to those guys. So, I think we feel good about what our offense is going to look like in regionals. Um, you know, Obviously going to Oklahoma is tough, but I think the girls are excited. I mean, it's the pinnacle of college softball, and they get to play on the biggest stage right now, and we have absolutely nothing to lose. So I think they're going to go out there and just show out and do what they can to stay in the game and compete as hard as they can every pitch.
So take me through Selection Sunday. You win the championship. Uh, you know you're in. What's going through your mind as the process goes, and then obviously your name pops up there in Norman.
I think we knew we were going to go to a top 4 or 5 seed just because of our early season woes and our RPI not being as good as last year. Last year was different. Our RPI was 75. We ended up being a 3 seed. But, we didn't win the games we needed to win. Even though we played such a tough schedule, our non-con strength of schedule didn't really matter at that point because we weren't winning the games we needed to when we got back to the Northeast. So I knew we were going to go somewhere big. Um, and when we didn't come up for the Austin regional, I said, I'm pretty sure we're next, guys. Get ready. So they were excited. I mean, I think the great thing about college softball is, everyone's fans of everybody. Our girls, they watch softball all the time. Obviously, Oklahoma has been a big name on ESPN with their power numbers and what they're doing as a team right now. So they're just excited that they get to show out on the biggest stage and have nothing to lose.
I'm just gonna text you next year. Then you let me know about where because you clearly have a bracketology knowledge very well. So I didn't. Yeah, I didn't. I wasn't. I do it for a living, and I didn't even know you were going necessarily to Norman. That's good. All right, I'm just gonna text you next year. You tell me where you're going, and I'll just put it in my bracket there because you obviously know what you're doing there. I will say this regional. A lot of offensive talent. Michigan can swing the bats. Lauren Putz, of course, a tremendous player, setting records at Michigan. Very well known, obviously, with her father being a relief pitcher in Major League Baseball back in the day. Of course, I just saw Kansas this year, the Big 12 with Ella Boyer. They've got a lot of offense. Oklahoma has a lot of offense. You've got a lot of offense. And that park is very inducive to a lot of offense.
Yes, scouting is going to be interesting this week. But I think, like I said, we're just going to go into it and play Binghamton softball, and we know that we can be in most games if we keep our offense going. So I actually think we play better when we're visitors. Start off the game hot, have some good at bats, make some loud outs, and kind of gain some momentum from there to then go out and play defense. So, regardless of who we're playing game two, I think we're going to feel good about just going out there and doing what we need to do and having nothing to lose, like I keep saying.
I want to talk about your non-conference schedule because it was a Donnybrook here. You did not go easy on your team. You opened the season in South Carolina, where you played Syracuse twice in that tournament, split with them. You played Virginia Tech twice, who was right there to host this year. You played South Carolina and your good buddy Ashley Chastain Woodard in that tournament. You go to Auburn, where you played Auburn. You played Campbell, who was right in the mix of CAA. You played Illinois, among others. You go to Coastal Carolina, where you played FAU and Coastal, among St. Joseph. A challenge. You played Princeton and took a game from them. They're a 3 seed in this NCAA tournament after winning the Ivy League in the regionals. Just talk about the philosophy of the way you scheduled your non-conference schedule here, because in some ways that sort of got you to a deep hole from a win-loss record. Did you feel like your team ever lose confidence because of that? Did that contribute to some of the adversity, or did it make them stronger for the end when you had to, where you right there, your backs are against the wall in the conference tournament, you win it, and now you'll be facing the competition you're going to be facing this weekend?
One of the things that we talked about as a group after going to regionals last year, we were really trying to win that conference championship. We hadn't won one in 10 years. We had a great group of girls that set their mind to something. A lot of great alumni that laid the groundwork for us to win last year's championship. And when we went to regionals, I think we were a little sh shell shocked. The atmosphere, we didn't have a ton of experience in a stadium like that, and I don't think we were really happy with how we performed. And then after the fact, they said we made that way more than it needed to be. It's not that deep, guys. So I think after we won last year, the next goal is, how do you go back to back and how do you go to regionals and potentially win a game? And, we sat down as a staff and said, well, if they want to be prepared, we have to put them in those environments, throughout the season. So if we have the chance to go to regionals again, it's just another day. So the girls were all on board. That stretch was tough, but when you look at the scores, the Virginia Tech game was 4-1. I think both Virginia Tech games and the South Carolina game that weekend, regardless of what the score says, we were either winning or tied through 4 innings. We were because of our offense, we were in those games. So I think, fast forward to now. Obviously, Oklahoma is the mecca of college softball, won 4 of the last 5 national championships. But because we've done this, all season, we've done hard things. We've played great mid-major teams, Coastal Carolina, Florida Atlantic, Princeton, like you said. We've been in a lot of big games, and I think that's going to prepare us, even regardless of whether we won or lost those games early on in the season. It's going to prepare us to step on that field and not make it more than it needs to be.
Sounds like, as you mentioned, that your players learned a lot from that experience last year as a 3 seed in Eugene in the Eugene regional. What did you learn as a coach from last year's regional that you hope to kind of remind yourself and apply this year?
I think I have to say too, I've been a part of Binghamton softball for a long time. I started playing here in 2010. I've been coaching here since 2016. And last year was important to me because I had never won a championship at Binghamton either. So I think I can also be a little at fault about making things a little bit too emotional and losing sight of what the real goal is. So I can't lie, when we went to regionals, I probably made it a little bit more than it needed to be as well. So I think, I'm still pretty young. I'm getting older, but I still consider myself a pretty young head coach. So I think, I've just learned that it doesn't matter what happens in the past. It's been a tough season. It's when I say blood, sweat, and tears from the staff and the player perspective, I think we've kind of gone through the gauntlet. Um, so every day is a new day. We're gonna leave for Norman tomorrow. We're gonna practice as hard as we possibly can on Thursday. And whatever happens against Oklahoma, we're going to go to sleep that night and put our cleats on the same way that Kansas or Michigan does that morning, and we're going to step on the field and do what we do.
What did you learn about yourself this year going through because last year things went smooth, right? Like you were a dominant team, you were ranked in the mid-major polls, earned a 3 seed. This year, obviously, things didn't go smoothly. What did looking back now in the season here, what did you learn about you as a coach? Because as a coach, you go through everything, and this was probably a first for you here. What did you learn that you'll learn for in the future?
One thing is that patience is definitely a virtue. Um, and I think the second thing is, you just can't lose sight of the group that you have currently. Um, and I think that was one mistake we kind of made both, as a staff and a team this past fall was you're never going to get the same team twice. Dynamics are going to be different. You lose seniors, you gain freshmen, and I think we went into this fall thinking like, oh, like we just did it. And it's just going to continue to happen. And, I think that started with me, and having that mindset. And we quickly found out that that's not how it is. Every team's a new team. And, I think you can't forget that we're working with 18 to 23-year-olds that are playing a game of failure. And how do you stay patient with them? How do you stay patient with yourself? Picking and choosing what you want to be hard on them about and what you want to give them a little bit more grace about. I think those are all things that I've learned throughout this season, but I think that's also why it makes this championship so much more special than last year, is because it was hard and the girls never lost belief in what they could do and what our potential was. Um, so you just got to grind it out. That's what I learned. You got to grind out every day, but you got to forget about what happened yesterday and just move forward.
Well, you were a target this year as the champions. You were a target. You were everybody. Everybody circled you on the schedule. I'm sure in the conference, and because of the expectations after last season, there was a lot there that you had to kind of handle maybe for the first time.
For sure, for sure. We had a target at our back, and even though we were the 2 seed, Bryant had a great season this year. Maddie Wachter was pitcher of the year. Bianca Bell was coach of the year, and they had a really great freshman class that came in and made them a pretty dynamic team. But the one thing that we talked about is, people are still coming at Binghamton because we won last year, and we have to expect to step on the field and get everyone's best game. We can't step on the field and think that we're just going to win because of the name on our chest. And I think we got shell shocked a few times in conference play. We lost some games we shouldn't have. Um, and like I know I keep saying it, but it was just hard and we learned a lot of lessons. But I think the one great thing about this group is we learned from our mistakes and we didn't let them happen again.
You did. It's good. You are very young, so you got a lot of time in the
Thanks,
coaching.
Eric.
There you go. I want to ask you now, light a moment here. Of course, we've talked when we were on last year. We talked about this famous alum, Tony Kornheiser, for a former Washington Post columnist who's now on ESPN. He's a co-host of the PTI, Pardon the Interruption, very successful show on ESPN. Also does his own podcast. They listened to your episode, your segment. He followed you on the regionals, gave you a shout out to your team and your program on the TV show and on the podcast there. I know you caught wind of that. What was your reaction when you heard about it?
I mean, Binghamton alumni stick together. I wasn't shocked. So I'm expecting Tony to listen to this again and give us another shout out for back to back.
Oh, I like that. All right, if he's listening, what's your message to him?
Go Bearcats.
There you go. I like that. That's pretty good. So keep it simple. I think
That's
you'll like
it.
that.
Keep it simple.
Keep it very simple. Last thing before I let you go, you mentioned obviously the mindset going into Norman. What are some things you want to see your team do that in those games in the regionals that okay, we're hitting on all three cylinders, we're doing everything we can beyond our control.
I just want to see them go out there and compete as hard as they possibly can every single pitch. We talked about it a little bit at practice tomorrow. We're playing in one of the best and biggest stadiums in the country where about 99% of the fans are going to be against you. So if you have a chance to play on SEC Network and you can make an ESPN play, you better be going for it and just competing every pitch. I think the biggest thing that we have to do is we have to make outs outs. We're playing a team like Oklahoma. They're giving us an out. We got to make it. And, if you make a mistake against an offense like theirs, they're definitely going to take advantage of it. So, this yesterday, today at practice, Thursday, when we're down in Norman, we're going to be obviously pretty defensive heavy and making them work really hard on that end. Just because we haven't seen, that type of offense with that type of power in 2 months since we were down in Auburn and South Carolina early on in the season. But, I think the message is just show out. We got nothing to lose. And if we compete every pitch, and even if we lose, but, viewers can say that we went out there and didn't back down to a challenge, I think that's going to be a win for us.
That's Jess Bump joining us here on In the Circle on D1 Softball, powered by 643. Joining us here. By the way, you can invite Tony Kornheiser to throw out the first pitch. He's leaving the house more and more now. He's doing more studio shows. I think you can invite him to throw a first pitch maybe next year.
Yeah, maybe we'll try it out. He did speak at commencement a few years ago, so it's
Right?
about time for him to come back, I think.
Ooh, there you go. It's out there in the Ethernet, their world there. Coach, hey, congratulations. Like I said, it was cool to watch your team fight the way they did this past weekend and win that conference championship in the fashion that they did. Good luck this weekend in Norman. And thanks for taking the time on short notice and with a busy week ahead to come on with us once again and talk to us on In the Circle of D1 Softball.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. It's always a pleasure.